watch
But yeah,
out.
for part of it, otherwise it's going to be super short because it was a short episode to begin with.
Right.
Um, and that's been part of the trick too. Is there's just like for that segment, there's not a whole lot. Even for what I'm doing this week, it's not. It's only like 32 minutes or something this week's episode. But it was like I want to get this week. I'm going through the timeline from the time Jody got home from school until her body was found. And we
Mm-hmm.
go into a lot of detail about a lot of the things that are in there. But it's like I get done. I got done. It's like, man, it still is only 30 minutes.
Yeah.
There's just not a whole lot
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
What's
Shoot,
up,
now I'm
Rena?
worried. Now I'm worried that, well, you'll know better than I will. I mean, I thought most of the questions were not spoilers, but
Okay,
now I'm
that's fine.
scared that maybe I'm remembering the like outside information I listened to or
They're
watched or
fine.
read.
And if that's the case, then I'll just say that we're
I'll
gonna
just
move
be like,
along.
we're not there
I
yet.
I
Okay.
didn't I didn't even look today. Like it was like the first couple that came in. I was like, oh, this person obviously knows a lot about the case.
Yeah.
What's up, Rena and Warrior and Lilius
Hi,
and
y'all.
Schaefer James just started the latest Adnan episode. What do you think, Schaefer? Pretty proud of that one. Grayson, Erica, Teresa, Danielle, Amy, Lynn,
Yeah, same, Amy,
Kelly.
same.
Hour and 15 minutes. Oh, 1:15 in, but this live works too. Uh, Amy, thanks, Amy. Love the Patreon drop today. Kelly, ahoy! Yeah, we in honor of Zach, we better.
Yo ho, yo ho,
Oh,
pirates lives are free. We pillage
Hey, hard as yo ho.
Yo ho.
Well, Zach's not here.
That
We
made me
had
angry. How fast?
we came close to not having a follow up this week, trying to find a
Yeah.
time when two of them. Oh, so what I
I'm super uncomfortable with Zach not being here twice in a row. People are going
yeah
to turn on us, and that is not what I want.
yeah.
And
As
not
long
how
as
I
they
feel.
just turn on you, let's try to make
I
you be
said
the
us.
bad guy.
It's not my fault.
So what I was starting to say is this trip this weekend. So like for the last 2 weeks, I've been working like 16-hour days through the weekends. Like I've got it. Like the schedule's killing me. I've got to get ahead, and I have now. Like I'm
Oh, you
ahead.
did
Like
get it.
what?
Okay, good.
Yeah, like I'm ahead. I already have this Sunday's episode done. It's ready to. It's published, ready to go. We're in good shape. And then I'm going to the cabin for 2 days this weekend. It's going to put me right back where I started. But
Enjoy
at
this
least I have enough time. I can
tiny
go.
bump of success before.
Yeah, at
Yeah,
least it put me in a place where I can go spend some time with the family and actually open our
great.
cabin.
That's great.
How hot Bob is by the Amy says she can always tell how hot Bob is by the F bombs. This
Oh
week
yeah.
they
Oh,
were
in the
doubly
in
needed.
the Patreon episode. Yeah.
I saw hot Bob and I thought she was going a different direction, so I wanted to make sure I read it.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course he did, and yet not really what he thought.
It's not at all. I was just gonna read a comment, but given the strike, we're not gonna read that
Right. But
comment.
Erica, thank you. I hope you're enjoying.
Uh,
Teresa says this past app could be a drinking game for butt dial.
Butt dial.
Hilarious.
God, that was
Valeria's popping in. Hi, Valeria.
the
12:30 a.m. Oh no, go to bed, woman.
one of the things in that was like baffling me so much was when they were so like abhorrent about the possibility of it being a butt dial. And all I kept thinking when I was listening to theirs before I even went through and did all the research for this episode,
Yeah.
I was like, why do you think that term exists?
I know.
Because it's a rare thing that never happened. The term exists because it happened all the fucking time.
Yeah, that was really funny.
Yeah.
That was very satisfying.
All right. So we probably shouldn't dink around for too long before we get
I guess
started.
we shouldn't dink
because we got a hard out. And even if we can get you out of here before 5:30, imagine you might be able to like go to the bathroom before you start. Yeah, before your new show.
My new show.
Amy says my latest pick on Insta did show amazing progress. So congrats on your workout / getting healthier progress. Thanks, Amy. So what she's saying is I'm hot. When I saw Bob hot, that's what she meant.
Yes, that's it.
That's not what she meant. Real quick, we had a shortened Patreon thing because of some scheduling and technical difficulties when we started. I was gonna say too, I'm doing with my students at the high school what I think is going to be a really cool project. They're going to make, this is their third project now. They're going to make like a 10 to 15 minute, kind of like a podcast. It'll be like an audio report, almost like an audio essay.
Yeah.
And I want them to practice having like changing voices. We're actually going to start editing. So they're going to do like a 3 to 5 minute intro, cut to an interview segment with someone, cut to an interview segment with someone else, and then a conclusion. So we're working on outlining and writing script and all that stuff and researching a topic. And we're doing it on 9/11. And check out, this is the thesis that I gave them for their to write their script. Is the thesis is that there's this crazy phenomenon how anyone who lived through that event 22 years later can tell you in detail everything that they were doing on that day.
Yeah.
On September 11th, 2001.
Yeah.
And I had a couple teachers just like come in and just who had just happened to pop in while I was teaching, my principal and stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
do you remember what you're doing on 9/11? Yeah. And like going through like all the way down to what they're eating for breakfast and all this.
Wow.
But it's crazy because these kids weren't alive when it happened.
Yeah.
And they were just like fast. Like they don't even really talk about it. Like it's part of history, but they don't really talk about it. Like it's like slowly faded out of the whole thing. So anyway, I'm pretty excited about that. So they're outlining, writing script, and then they're going to have to schedule 2 interviews with staff from our school.
Oh, nice.
To get
That's a great assignment.
To get those, and then they will then write a conclusion. They will record those. We'll edit them together. They got 2 computers today for editing. We just ordered all of my audio recording equipment. Super excited.
Great. I'm so glad you're actually getting equipment. That's important.
Yeah, because the first 2 assignments they've had to record on their phones.
Yeah. Look, now you got everybody reminiscing about where they were.
Yeah, it was great. That was the most engaged my students have been is when I was introducing this project and I talked them through my day and like about like what I was doing, but also like what I was feeling. And I was like, when you look at this and it's just a thing in the history books, but you don't understand, like now we know everything that happened, but in the moment we didn't know what was happening, and we knew we were under attack, and it was fucking terrifying. And I was like going through all the different like steps of the day for me, like what I was doing. And it was the first time since I've been teaching that I had every student like this.
Yeah.
Just like, what? Yeah. So it'd be pretty cool.
Good work.
For high school child, the target, the store was empty. Okay, I think we can start now.
Warrior Princess, I hear you. My whole perception of what memory is anymore has totally changed because of shows like this.
Yeah. And it is.
I think I felt this way. I think I was at this place. I seem to remember doing this.
I had one today. Somebody from the Patreon was like, "You keep referencing a 345 call that can't be the come get me call," and they're like, "There is no 345 call." And I'm like, "Yes, there is." And I went and looked at I'm like, "There isn't."
Oh.
There isn't. I don't know where that came into my brain, but once it landed there, that became a fact. And I'm like, that didn't exist. So now I gotta correct that. Like there was only 2 possibilities. They had to choose 236, which is impossible, and 315, also impossible. They had to pick one or the other.
Them one more.
Yeah.
You try to give them one more for free. No freebies.
Yeah. But yeah, it is like so. And part of it too is I'm like leading into like teaching to the affective learning domain, which is something that I've always taught when I taught education methodology, which is if you can get somebody to attach an emotion to what you're telling them, they'll retain it.
Yeah.
And so there's a little sneak that I'm gonna sneak in later.
Sneak.
But yeah, but I think it's a fascinating thesis is that there's no other day that in my lifetime that I know of where I can remember that detail. And it was 22 years ago.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I can't remember every detail.
Even from that day?
No, I mean, I think because I'm pretty sure I had the day off, and I think that it was just one of the like I think I just sat in front of the television. You know what I mean? Like and then I know what I did that night because my friend was doing a 1-person show and he was going to cancel, and so many of us were like, please don't. We need community. Like we need something to do and somewhere to go and be. And it was wonderful. So like that's but the rest. But I remember the morning. I remember waking up and finding out. I obviously remember.
Oh, I forgot because it's probably different from you too, because you're on the West Coast. So it was. It started at 6:45 in the morning for you.
Yeah.
Or 5:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Danielle, thank you very much for the super chat, and we'd love to have you.
I would love to take that class.
I'm enjoying it. So we need to get started. Are you prepared to do an intro?
Not at all. Not at all.
Gonna winger?
Not at all.
Gonna winger?
Not. I continue to not remember that that's even a thing.
Yeah.
Oh wait, that's funny. I think when I was trying to figure out the whole issue with not being able to hear you earlier today, somehow I closed out the file, so I got to reopen it real quick. But I have done that, and I'm ready to hit record whenever you want.
Let's hit it.
Okay, recording.
1, 2, 3. Right. Well, let's go. Let's see what you can come up with.
I've already forgotten. I forget. Are we calling this a season, or this is just sort of a non-season?
Series. I would call this series.
Okay.
So part 2 of the series on the murder of Jody Jones.
Yeah. Great. Okay. This is part 2. I keep forgetting that part 1 was mostly you talking about something else. Got it. Okay. Ahoy, friends. You are listening to the Friday follow-up for the second episode in the Murder of Jody Jones series. We are sans Zach again today. We miss him very much, but we do have a lot to jump into. So let's get into a conversation about that and maybe something else I'd like to talk about for just a moment, if you don't mind, Bob.
I just want to point out, if what you're going to say is that you want to talk about a nonce case, that's Janet's fault.
Thank you for drawing a circle around that. Well, It's not my fault. Listen, everyone, we're recording this on the day that Bob's follow-ups drop as responses to the prosecutor's episodes on Adnan, and so it just came out today, and so it's fresh in my mind, and I know it's fresh in a lot of people's minds in the YouTube chat. So that's if I may, I'm going to turn it back on you and say it's your fault for dropping it on the same day that we record, because of course our heads are full of that as well as Jody Jones.
Yeah, and that's fine because this episode of Jody of the series was just kind of background, and I know we have some questions, but I'm sure there's not a lot of questions. The episode that's coming this Sunday in the Luke Mitchell and Jody Jones case is much more data driven. Like we're going to be talking timeline and call logs and witness statements. All that is going to start to come out this Sunday. But so you listened already to the my reply brief episode about the Nisha call.
I did. I had a crazy day, and I still knew that there was no way I wasn't going to make time to listen to it before I saw you, because I just didn't feel comfortable not having listened to it in case I had any thoughts or questions. But my main takeaway is that was a badass episode. Sorry to come on here. You know I like to call you out on your SHIT as well, but I got to give credit where credit's due. It was very tight. I mean, I think I will even put it in the context of saying, I think the week before you were sort of hindered by the information that they had chosen to speak about in that third episode of theirs. And so there was stuff to talk about, but I think you really got into the weeds on timeline stuff and phone calls and just general logic problems that were very concise, and you were just really able to shine a spotlight on that to me were very, very compelling. And I appreciated it very much.
Well, I'm glad. I want to touch on a couple things about this. First of all, a lot of people have been asking about the crossover episode, the possibility of getting on and having a conversation with Brett and Alice.
Yeah, I'm assuming they're going to do it.
I don't know. So this is where that's at. After Brett and Alice were on True Crime Garage, I sent Brett another message, and that was last Thursday, I think, and just said, let's go and get this thing scheduled. Let's get, we can record it, publish it on both feeds, and just have like a friendly conversation about this stuff. And as of right now, I just he read it right away, but so he's left me on read since Thursday, so I don't know what's going on with that. I was told that in their fan group, he's been asking their listeners if he should come on and have a discussion / debate with me about it. I don't know. So as of now, it does not seem like they're leaning that direction. So we're just going to keep marching on. And so that's for a lot of the people that are like, well, why are you doing this? And they feel like it's me, I don't know, trying to be negative about them and their work. Listen, what's very important to me is that the record be set straight. I also want to make clear, I'm not arguing at all about opinions, because I've had people say that, like, Why can't people have different opinions? They can. Anybody can have different opinions. I don't care what people's opinions are. My problem is that you can't have your own facts. The facts have to be accurate. And it does have, as I mentioned, I think last week, it could have a profound effect in what happens in real life, the amount, the public opinion and pressure that could be put on. And I think that Hay deserves to have a real investigation done to figure out who actually killed her. And if you've now convinced, tens of hundreds of thousands of people that Adnan is guilty now, and now what they have screaming, the Baltimore PD or DA's office have screaming down their throats are people that are convinced that he's guilty. That pressure goes away, that investigation goes away, and everybody, whether you're a listener, whether you're Brett and Alice, anybody, I just want you to be clear. I'm perfectly fine with anybody having your own opinions and your own perspectives, but you don't get your own facts, and that's what the reply briefs are all about. And this week was all about the Nisha call, and obviously we're not going to go through a long time breaking all that down because I did it there, and we aren't planning to. I will tell you this: people, a lot of you have asked, will I be releasing these on the main feed? If Brett and Alice do not agree to come on and have a conversation where we can, and the reason I want to do that is I want them to have the opportunity. If I say, hey, you said this, here's all of the documents that say that's not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
What say you now? Like, was that an accident? Is there a reason why you don't think they're relevant? Let's talk these things through. And I would like to do that with a back and forth. But if they're not going to do that, then I'm going to at some point put these reply brief episodes out onto the main feed, because I think the record needs to be set straight. And we've got a lot of people that are listening to them on Patreon. So it's getting that way, and a lot of them are taking them out into the real world. But, for example, this week was pretty much the entire episode was about the Nisha call and how ridiculous it is to try to claim that was Jay and Adnan together. Janet, now you heard not my opinion, but based on all of the facts and the record that was presented in this episode, how do you feel about the Nisha call?
I feel more certain than ever that it was a butt dial.
Yeah. And
I just wish there was a term we could use that everyone understood. I wish there were a term we could use that everyone understood that would help us just recognize that could even be possible. I wish there was something, if it were something that happened all the time, we would have a term for it that kind of everyone understood. If it was common, and it was common to the era of the cell phones we're talking about.
Yeah, it's
I just wish, if calling it a butt dial, it's like, who's going to know what that is? You know what I mean?
Right. Sarcasm received and appreciated. Obviously, the term butt dial exists because it was something that happened all the time back then, especially with those phones. But obviously the episode is not just about that. You're getting into the actual facts and timings and how it's literally impossible for that call to be what they said that call is. You can get all that there. We won't dig into it much more than that. But I do want to address one other thing, just because I addressed it on here a couple weeks ago, I think, when I think somebody in our chat here, somebody asked a question about if I had known about the rose that was in Hayes' car and if that had changed my opinion about Adnan's guilt or not. And I had said in that episode, I'm like, that was the one thing. I think it was literally the one thing that they presented that I was unaware of. I had no idea that Hay had a flower in her car. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciated that they brought that up until I found out that there was no rose in her car. I don't know if you heard about all of it.
Yeah.
So I just want to,
the paper. And so whatever's the detritus that's left after you pull the.
It wasn't even that. It was paper.
Crumbs.
So it was floral rose and baby breath floral paper. What it was paper that had roses and baby's breath printed on it. There was no flower in it.
Oh, ever?
Well, as a matter of fact, the evidence tech that collected it and photographed it and processed it was asked in the transcripts. And this is, by the way, this is all Colin Miller that dug all this stuff up, because I just took Brett and Alice at their word that there was a rose and tried to figure out what that could mean.
Right.
And but Colin Miller, of course, then gets out the transcripts where the evidence tech is testifying. Yeah, and she was asked, can you tell if there had ever been a flower or flowers in that paper? And she said, I can't. I don't know. There was some kind of residue that looks like maybe it came from a rose petal or maybe it came from a flower petal, but I'm not a flower expert. So it couldn't be any more clear. Just to set the record straight, the reason I had never heard about there being a flower in Hayes' car is because there was, in fact, not a flower in Hayes' car. Yeah, that was why.
What a mess.
So, do with that what you will, but don't go.
Tangly mess.
But don't go on the internet arguing about that flower like so many people were doing because it didn't exist.
Okay, well, I've been staying off the whatever we call it now. So I've missed all of Colin's beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
And for the last week I went and had read everything that was. Gosh. Anyway,
essentially,
it would just be so much more fun if this weren't about, a real person's life and the killing of another real person, and it was just a place where wonks just bickered over something. But that's where it kind of hurts.
Yeah. So we'll move on, but just know it's things like that why I think it's important to do what I'm doing right now is because that lit the internet on fire. That's what everybody, and it was because Brett had said his wow moment, when he realized that he knew Adnan was guilty, was when he found out there was a flower in the car. And I haven't.
I'm so sorry. No. Even if it were true, I don't know. I don't know. I'm so sorry. You're gonna have to cut that out. I'm so sorry. I can't. I didn't hear that. I didn't listen to that. So I just had a natural reaction to that. I'm so sorry.
No, that's all right. Let me try to clean that up so I don't have to include that. I mean, I'm happy leaving it in, but I'll cut it out for you because I know that you won't like that. He had said that his wow moment was when he found out this flower was in the car, and he's and then if you listen to them give their final theories, they all center around this rose in the car and how Adnan was making a final play to try to convince her to take him back and got her a flower, and these whole theories were based around this flower that didn't exist. So I'm hoping that they'll do their own reply brief at some point and come out and be like, hey, there's something we got wrong. Maybe they still think he's guilty, and that's fine. But certainly it shouldn't be based on a flower that was not a flower, that didn't exist.
Okay. Well, thanks for that clarification. This is rough.
Yeah.
Literally. There you are.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I am continuing to look very much forward to all of your coverage on that. And thanks for doing it. It's helpful.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to it. And this is not 100% confirmed, but it seems pretty close. That if any of you are going to be at Obsessed Fest, I had a conversation today that sounds like I'm going to be doing a panel about this case, doing a presentation about this case at Obsessed Fest. So if you are going, look for that on the agenda, because that will be, it looks like most likely going to be happening at Obsessed Fest.
There's no way I'm missing that. There's no way I'm missing that. I don't care what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Don't tell Obsessed Fest I said that.
Right.
Right.
So we should move on. I don't think.
Let's move on.
I don't, unless there's anything specific you want to talk about the reply brief episode, we can move on to the questions about Luke, because I know you've got another podcast to record. So I haven't even said yet. Neither one of us said. You said we were saying Zach. He's on assignment today. We are without. Zach hasn't left us or quit. He's just.
This is not the beginning of an era or anything like that. This is just he absolutely could not make last week, and then this week we had to switch things around. Everyone's schedule, nothing was lining up. And there was a text thread that you can all feel very comfortable exists that is me really, really unhappy that he's missing 2 weeks in a row, and him being really, really unhappy. And then Bob telling us both, that's not really what's important. We need to get an episode out because we're trying to do some work here.
So all it is right now we have, we're busy. Zach's kids have sports. He's coaching their sports. Bella has sports. We have all this. So it was like, right now was the only time, and it wasn't even for our normal full time when at least two of us could be in the room. So we should stop running our yaps about it.
Yeah, but we love you, Zach. We miss you. Come on back. And you know what? If he's going to miss episodes about the Jody Jones case, I think these are probably the better ones for him to miss because you're still gathering information.
Right.
We had a very cursory introduction last week. This week, we get a little bit deeper into it. It still remains super fascinating, incredibly tragic. I, of course, feel horrible that Jody's life was taken when she was so young. And you really start to paint this picture about this community and the people in it and the way people seem to be beginning to respond to what happened and who this prime suspect is. But there are also people who are listening who know the case, who are coming to hear your take on it. And so some of the questions that we got or some of the comments that we got in this week's follow-up, I think it's probably best to skip over just because they are kind of spoilers a little bit. And I don't mean to use such a casual term for something so serious, but in this case, you know, we probably don't want to get into some of that before you've had a chance to sort of cover it as part of the timeline. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I noticed that too. And this is, I'll tell you, this is a little overwhelming for me, even like coming into a case that so many people from the UK, our listeners, have been studying for 20 years, and it's a little terrifying, like when I say something like something that I'm reading, because I'm finding there's a ton of misinformation out there with the resources that I have to gather information. So, and I've definitely had where like I said, as an example, in the first kind of when I was kind of introducing the case, I had said that that Luke was obsessed with Marilyn Manson, and some people that have studied the case, written about the case, done documentaries about the case, were like, that's what the prosecution said, but he did definitely not. He had that movie that he had about Marilyn Manson was from some kind of like music club or something he ordered. It came with something. It came with this DVD a couple days after Jody was killed. He didn't order that movie. And they're like, and there was like a torn poster of Marilyn Manson on the wall or something. And they used that as the whole obsession. So that was part of like what this week, what I was kind of starting to correct a little bit, because, you read stuff and then you find out that there's way more to the story. And in fact, this week, a woman named Donna, who writes a blog, and I'm sorry, next week, Donna, I will be sure to plug your blog, because she has been researching and blogging about this case for a long time. And she's been emailing with me and helping me with actual like source documents and case material to break down timeline. And a big shout out to Matt Elliott, who is he's been a long time listener, has always helped out and has helped. He connected me with Donna to help get some of that stuff.
That's great.
But anyway, so anyway, the point being, we put this out, and there's people that have definitely been studying this case for years that are like, yep, this is interesting, but what about the DNA testing and stuff like that we haven't gotten to yet? So yeah, so any of that stuff we'll have to just wait till we get there. So if you're one of those people and you're new here and you're like, hey, I want to talk about all this stuff, our process is that we break down one element at a time, and we go super in depth with one element at a time. That's why it like last week's episode was short. This week's episode is going to be, I think, about 32 minutes or something like that, because the episode that's coming this Sunday is on the timeline from the time Jody got home till her body was found. And so it's like we dig into everything there is for that subject and then put it together. And then the next week we move on to the next thing and we just build on it. So if you're like, why aren't you talking about this stuff yet? Trust me, we're going to get there. We just go through it piece by piece, methodically to get there.
Yeah, great. Well, I know Joanne had a question that I think maybe fits into kind of where we are in understanding the story and the people in it. Joanne says, do we know what Jody and Luke's relationship was like leading up to the time she was murdered? I wonder what her family thought of Luke. I think you touched on that a little bit. Do you want to kind of circle back on that and expound it all?
I can't get a clear picture on what her family thought about Luke. So there was, and part of that, what you're going to hear this week is Jody's family they've all given lots and lots of statements. Like, it's interesting. Things just work differently in the UK than they do here in the States. Like, Jody's mother gave 12 statements in the first 30 days of the investigation. And a lot of them conflict with each other. Like at one point she's saying one thing and then she says something different in the next time. You have changing memories and all this stuff going on. And she had said and at some point that she knew and she'd kind of accepted the fact that Luke and Jody were having sex. There was, of course, the grounding, which is a whole nother thing that we're going to talk about this week, the details about that. But then there's also a statement that like Luke had been to their house. It seemed like they were okay with Luke. Jody was at Luke's house a couple days before. And I think her mom like got her a taxi to come back. It seems like there was no issues, but it doesn't seem like the first time there's any evidence of her family having a problem with Luke was after when there was going to be a memorial service for Jody.
Right.
And at that point, seems like based on what the police were telling them, they said they don't want Luke to come to that. But I think prior to that, Luke was a common misconception in this case is that Luke went out and found the body by himself. That's not true. He was searching with the family. He was with Jody's grandmother, her sister, and her sister's boyfriend. They were all four together looking for Jody. And of course, we know now this ended in tragedy. But think about if it's just, hey, somebody hasn't turned up and we need to go find them. They got along and were close enough. Surely no one thought she had been murdered.
Right.
It was just, they were just, hey, where's she at? Do you want some help? And then they all, went together looking for them. So my kind of read on the relationship is that they seem to get along. Somebody may correct me on that, but from what I've understood, I know he's been to their house. They knew, Jody's mom knew that she was spending time at Luke's house. They were searching together that night. They were communicating and talking on the phone together about that stuff. So, or at least, text and on the phone that night. So, when they were trying to find Jody. So it seems like the relationship was pretty good with Luke and Jody's family.
Okay. I'm starting to get paranoid that some of the stuff I was about to read is also something that you haven't gotten to yet, because I was poking around also and interested in the case. And so I'm going to say this, but Rebecca says, if Luke met Jody's family on the path, he going towards East Houses and the fam heading in the opposite direction, and the grandmother suggested the party retrace Luke's steps, continue in their direction toward New Battle, Luke must have already passed the V shape in the wall, or the piece of the wall that's missing, once. If that's the case, I wonder why the dog didn't alert on passing that area where Jody was the first time.
Okay,
Have we talked about that yet?
We haven't. I'll address it real quick. So I get into that specific conversation in detail in Sunday's episode.
Okay.
But I'll just tell you this for now to hold you over.
Okay.
Luke with his dog Mia walked from New Battle to East Houses down the Roanstike path, and they did walk past where Jody was. When Luke met with Jody's family, he asked them if they had anything with her scent on it so that he could put the dog into tracking mode. So, and there's more to it than that, but just so you know, like, so when he went through the first time, she wasn't tracking because she had nothing to track.
Right.
He needed a scent, and that was, he was going through to see if he found her. And then when he got to the other side, as the story goes, then he was looking for something to put her scent on so she could go look for her.
Okay. More general question from Rebecca. What is the appeals process like in the UK? Does Luke have attorneys that you could contact?
I don't know about he has had several appeals and they've all been denied. I've read through some of the appeals documents. We're going to be getting into those. I don't know how it works there, because like a lot of the stuff that's been raised on appeal to me seems like in the States, like that should be a new trial.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't. As far as attorneys go, I don't know. When I get a little further down the road, I may see if any of I think they call them solicitors, or attorneys, may be interested in doing an interview and talking about the case and filling us in. But I don't know. I haven't attempted to do that yet. I'm still trying to wrap my brain around all this. And then like this week when I was writing this episode, like I had found resources that I thought were really good to put together the timeline. And then thankfully I got connected with Donna and Matt, and they're like, no, here's, call records and statements and stuff like that to piece all together. And I had to kind of reboot. And so I feel like I'm juggling right now when I'm trying to write this, because I'm like trying to find information. I'm trying to get source documents. It seems like in Scotland, I don't remember if I said that in the Patreon pre-show or on here, but it just seems like FOIA requests aren't the same as they are here, because like this has been a 20-year-old case that a lot of people are very, very, I don't want to say obsessed, but they're very passionate about. in the United States, when there's a case like that, Adnan's case, West Memphis 3, cases like that, people have FOIA'd the documents, they have the official case documents and put them all over the internet, and that does not seem to be the case with this one.
Well, Kelly, who's been helping us with episode structure for some of these non-wrongful conviction, kind of this in-between season that we're doing, is trying to find an attorney that maybe got an exoneration for a client in the UK, so we could get into details a little bit more about what that whole process is like. I think that'd be really fascinating and kind of a great component to better understand this case.
It would be, even if we don't get to talk to one of Luke's attorneys, I would love to pick the brain of a solicitor from the UK about the appeals process and how it works, and because we already know how difficult it is to overturn a conviction in the United States. I wonder how much more difficult it is there, because there's so many different nuances to their system, like even the like sentence length. That it seems like they are at least better than us at prison being intended for rehabilitation and not locking people up and throwing away the key for the rest of their life, where someone who was convicted of murder may be able to still get out in 20 years and take another shot at life. And I wonder if that plays into the appeals. Listen, you're not going away for life, you're only going away for 20 years, but you're going to sit there the whole 20 years. Right. I don't know. I'd love to have the answer to those questions.
Great. Well, we'll keep working on it, and thank you so much, Kelly, for doing that. Yeah. Have we talked about the condom?
No. I mentioned it in the first episode briefly.
Okay.
But we have not gotten into detail about it.
Okay. So should we want to press pause on that and come back to it?
Yeah. Let me come in. I'm going to respond to what Valeria just said while you figure out what question we want to do next.
Thank you.
Valeria in the YouTube chat, who's from the UK, just said that she, as far as when I was talking about the FOIA and stuff like that, she doesn't think you can even get trial transcripts in the UK, which that explains a lot. That explains why I can't find all these documents, because they sounds like you can't get them. Whereas here in the United States, any fully adjudicated case, you can file a FOIA request and pretty easily get most of a case file. Sometimes you got to fight for some stuff, but for the most part, all that stuff is public record and it's easy to get a hold of.
Okay. Well, believe it or not, I just want to shout out Joanne and Rich and Kim and Emma for your questions and comments, but I think they do fall into the category of we will get there. And so you should have another opportunity to put some of this out there for us in future follow-ups. But we really appreciate your enthusiasm and your interest, and in many cases, your knowledge of the case. It's going to be exciting to talk about this with listeners who, really have dug in and have a lot to contribute.
Yeah. So that's it. We're out of questions.
Yeah, except I just have one quick more thing that I wanted to add that was posted by Emily. Emily says, regarding the Heyman Lee case and the prosecutor's podcast, Bob, you keep saying in follow-up episodes that you're going to talk about Adnan again and that you're sorry to the people that are sick of this case. I think it needs to be said that there is no need to keep apologizing or preface anything, because you stated very early on in the Truth and Justice history that this would be a dynamic podcast. New episodes for each season would drop when there were updates on each case. Adnan and Hay were season 1, and this case being back in the podcast public eye warrants an update. So to the T&J Army, instead of framing the discussion as, oh, sorry, we're still talking about this case, let's frame the discussion as updates to season 1. Discussion fatigue is real, but let's remember there still has been no justice for anyone involved.
Thank you. That's very good. That's a very good point. I hadn't seen that one on there. And also, again, thank you for that statement, but also a lot of it depends on too what else we have going on. So like this case, I know we went into this with 12 questions, but I'm guessing when you just read through them, you found they were all
like 3. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all about stuff we haven't covered yet. And just, I don't think you clarified that, but so Janet has been listening to and studying the case more. And when you do that, it happens to me too. It gets to be tricky to remember which thing you heard in last week's episode and which one was coming up. So, yeah, the discussion, I knew we were going to be a little short on questions today, which is why a little conversation about the Adnan case is fine. Less than I thought. So I think with that, we'll give this a minute and look at the YouTube chat and see if there's any other comments that we need to cover before we go. I hate to, I hate to leave you guys with these super short episodes, but I also really don't like wasting people's time. So I'm not going to just yammer on if there's nothing to talk about, because we're going to get to the important stuff as we move on.
Got it.
I'm just looking to see if there's anything on there.
Well, while you're doing that, I'm going to say, I don't know why you've been featuring your dip container front and center in the screen for like 10 minutes.
It's our new sponsor.
It's almost as if you were told you had to. You're just sort of sitting with it.
It's got to be in frame. What does Rebecca Michael say? If you want a transcript of a person, I'm going to be coming with that. So real quick, Rebecca in the YouTube chat says, if you want a transcript of proceedings at any court or tribunal, except the Court of Appeal Criminal Division or the Administrative Court, please complete Form EX 107. So no appeal. Oh, that didn't go where I thought it was going. So no appeal transcripts.
The appeal transcripts you say are out there, right?
They're not. What I have read are not transcripts of the appeals. They're just like briefs and stuff.
Oh, I see. But that would suggest that maybe you can get a hold of the original case file if you at least that you can submit a request for it. Whether or not you get it or not is another matter. But
yeah, I just feel like they must be blocking it somehow or another, or it would be out there.
Yeah.
Let me do this real quick. Let me button up the recording of the episode. And we can just chat with YouTube for a few minutes, because I do not want to waste everybody's time on this.
Sure.
So with that being said, I don't think we should go on and yammer on just for the sake of putting minutes on a podcast. So we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up for this week. Make sure you tune in on Sunday, because Sunday we start getting into the nitty gritty truth and justice type details with the Luke Mitchell and Jody Jones case. Again, we're looking at phone records, witness statements, and building a timeline of the events that happened that day. Super fascinating. And then I'm sure that'll generate obviously a lot more questions next week. So make sure you tune into that. But for now, we're not going to leave you guys hanging out here all day just listening to us yammer for the sake of us yammering. If only Zach was here, he'd have something to say.
That's right. I think he would probably say, thanks, everybody.
Right. Thanks, everybody. Bye. All right. We can stop on our audio recording. Oh, we'll see how everybody thinks about that. I'm just waiting for all the Facebook comment. Guys, please listen, guys. I need all of you that are in here, all you diehards, to come defend us on the fan page on Friday. People are like, what the hell? 25-minute episode? That was nothing. Yeah. It's tricky. Yeah, so that must all those comments were all stuff. That's what I thought when I didn't look at all of them, but when I looked at the first handful.
That's where I got scared. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I think we haven't covered some of this. Sure.
Yeah, when I looked, like the first few that started coming in, I was like, oh, oops, we're not talking about DNA yet, we're not talking about the condom yet, we're not talking about this and that, right, we haven't so we'll have to get to all of that stuff. Teresa said the 345 calls Bob Planet. Yeah, so I'm working on right now, Teresa, the next installment, which will be part 4.5. It's the fact that it's taken me 2 episodes to get through one of their episodes is either a good thing or a bad thing. I guess that's what happens when you use the actual case documents. Yeah. It takes longer to go through it. But yeah, I need to correct that. And I should look up. I will in the episode look up who said. I don't know where that came from. Somebody was like, the only call after that was 348 when there was the call to Patrick. I was like, no, there was a 345 call. And I feel like where I got that from was one of the appeals where Judge Welch was saying that, because the state argued in the PCR about the cell phone evidence, they argued, well, if we knew all this couldn't have happened at 2:36, we could have just changed our timeline and said it happened at 3:45.
Oh, maybe.
And in the opinion, he's like, no, you can't do that because of this, and this.
Right.
But I don't know. Somehow that stuck in my head, those 345. But that was another, to me, was a huge, this has been good for me going back through all these documents and records to see like just how crazy this is. Like,
yeah,
they only had, I thought 3, but 2 options for the come and get me call. And I always wondered, why would they go with 2:36? Why would they do that? They know it's impossible. And then you realize like, oh, because 3:15 is very obviously impossible.
Right.
So that has to be 2:36, which we now know is also impossible. So there was no come get me call. And I'm really like, I want to hear, because what I'm expecting when I'm always playing this is a little inside baseball for you guys since we gave you a short episode, is, always playing chess for me. Like I'm always like thinking ahead, like what's going to be the response to this and how are they going to, I'm waiting for it to come. They're like, well, there was no come get me call. And that's how it happened. I'm like, so what? So now we're saying Jay doesn't matter at all. Like you have to completely like at what point are you just telling a story? It's already pretty close to that, but it's
yeah.
I mean, Grant, nobody has said that yet, but that's what I'm waiting for is,
Yeah.
well, it doesn't matter because yes, 236 is impossible for a come
Oh
get me
my
call.
God.
Yes,
It's
315 is
so
impossible
crazy.
for a come get me call. So that's, there just wasn't a come get me call. I'm like, we are now officially to the point where 0% of the story actually came from Jay, the one witness in the case.
I know. It's
wait for it.
It's a cognitive dissonance thing.
Wait for it. I promise you, that's going to be the next big theory to come out. There actually was no come get me call. We're gonna completely.
I think you're probably right.
We're gonna continue to say that the case is built on Jay, while creating a narrative that he never said.
Hear me out. There was no come and get me call.
I'm with you.
But Jay was walking around where the cars pick up, and he finds the rose that got thrown out of the car, and he knows just by finding that rose.
That's I see it now. Yeah, that's what it is. That's why the rose wasn't in the car. I don't even need to finish
that. If you can't see where I'm going with that, then I don't need to finish.
It's obvious. If the rose wasn't in the car, it had to be because Jay found it on the side of the road. After I love that Kelly paid $5 to ask me this question. Yes, Kelly, no. I'm good. Yes, thank you. And yeah, I am getting them, Kelly. I've just been swamped. So, and also, and I'm not complaining. I made all these choices myself, but I'm working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week right now, trying to keep myself above water. And so, like, I have every time you send me an email, Kelly, I flag it so I don't lose it. It's just in my flag folder. It's not the same as
reading or replying it. And I agree with Valeria. Kelly, you need to get a refund for that $5.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. $5. Listen, anytime, Kelly, you want me to answer one of your emails, send me $5 and then say read your email, and then I'll check it out while you're trying to help me out of the goodness of your heart.
Yeah.
No, I will get. And part of it was Kelly just and like I'm literally having to prioritize my entire to-do list right now, and it's kind of like, okay, I know I'm going to be covering the Luke Mitchell case for at least the next 6 weeks, so I'm not going to be doing any other interviews for the next 6 weeks, so I can get back with Kelly on this. Always in my mind, tomorrow.
Sure.
But tomorrow very quickly becomes the next day and the next day and the next day. You know what's good news for me?
Holding up your Yeti. What can I hold up?
This is
Erica, I don't have my big girl juice container today because I didn't have room.
You should know this is not a Yeti.
Oh, it's an
Nalgene bottle. But for some reason I chose to put a Yeti sticker on it. And I think it's because anybody knows that Yetis are not transparent.
Oh, okay. Now we're talking about getting into the weeds.
Yeah. Yeah, I also have a little, that's a stone glass. I should let you go. You have another pot. You know, I will say, I'm just sitting there like, oh, good. We considered bullshit for longer.
It doesn't matter to me. I mean, at a certain point, like, I'm just still going to be in this chair with a microphone and earphones on.
But you might want to take a squiz before.
I will take a squiz, but even if I'm late for the other one, then that's fine.
What was I just going to say? Fuck. Oh, I was just going to say one good thing about this being a 30-minute episode is the last thing on my agenda this week that has to be done before I can leave is to edit this follow-up, which is usually done on Wednesdays. We're recording this Wednesday night. Right. It's only 30 minutes long. It's going to take me like an hour.
Great.
As long. Oh, I am going to let you go so that you have time to send me your audio file before you start your next one.
Yeah. I usually start that process where we're even still talking to each other, which you may not know, but.
Yeah, I usually see it's already in my email. So we'll end that. Yeah. Hey, maybe real quick, everybody in the YouTube chat, sorry, while Jan and I just talk and pretend like you guys aren't even there. You're truly a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
Where was really the come get me call coming from? Where, time, where, to where? We don't know. This was Grace said the come get me call is an income. All we know is there was an incoming call that was 20 seconds long to Adnan's phone at 3:15. That since Jay said Adnan called him and told him to come pick him up, it had to be one of those two calls, even though it can't be either one of those calls.
It can't be.
And by the way, I will defend this, and I'm going to read Devin's super chat here in just a second. I forgot what I was going to say. So brain dead. I'm so. Oh, I have to say this: the fact that it's taking me 2 episodes to get through their 1 episode is because what did I say from the very beginning? The most critical point in time in this entire investigation is what was happening between 2:15 and 4 o'clock.
Yes.
Because we should be looking at alibis. So the fact that they breezed through it, I'm taking my time because that's the most important part. Devin,
right.
Thank you for the super chat.
Nothing about that seems. I mean, you say that. I mean, I appreciate that you're sort of trying to be mindful of time, or that you're saying like, oh, I'm taking too much time to talk about this, but like, it doesn't come off that way at all. It comes off as I have my work cut out for me. There's a lot that's wrong, or there's a lot that there's a lot that's being breezed over that I don't have the luxury of breezing over because it's critical to the facts of the case. So I don't know in what universe that's a waste of time when the whole point is like, let's get it right. And if you do slip up on something and you think there's a 345 call and there isn't, guess what? The next episode, you're like, I'm going to go ahead and eat shit right now. I thought there was a 345 call. I've heard it somewhere. I don't know where it was. I don't just let bullshit float out there.
That's right. No bullshit here. No, maybe that'll be our next T-shirt for Truth and Justice. No bullshit. It'll just say. It'll just say no.
Bullshit. It'll have we're still plenty full of bullshit.
It'll
maybe
have
just not that bullshit.
It'll have a finger on it like this, and it'll say no bullshit. That's what the shirt will say.
Don't. You'll regret it.
You know what I think? I love our audience so much, and I'm because everything is not normal right now. I'm like constantly feeling like I don't want to let the audience down that has been here with us for all this time. And so I'm constantly like, I'm trying to do this. I'm sorry. And I feel that comment you read, I hadn't seen that. And I'm glad you read it because it's probably when you were here, but even then when you were reading that, instead of being like, that's really nice. Thank you. My brain was just going, it's super fucking annoying to say you're sorry all the time, idiot. You better apologize for that.
That's the loop. That's the loop apologists like me get caught in. It sucks you in. It's like a black hole.
Yeah. But just so you guys know, it's all because I love you guys very much. And I love you, Janet.
Love you, buddy.
I'm gonna let you go do your other podcast. And we're early, so I'm gonna start editing this tonight.
Great.
Oh, real quick, Grayson. Real quick, Grayson for super chat. Sports and practice goes on at Woodlawn High between 2:15 and 4 p.m. Yeah, exactly right. And so what we got to figure out is that where Adnan was between them? Is there any evidence? Is there 100% of all the evidence available besides Jay that says that he was?
Yeah.
Yes, there was.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to end this stream. And thank you guys for tuning in. And make sure you jump on the fan page and say things like, if people are saying, why is the episode so short? And they're just rambling, just be like, that's because Bob and Janet aren't going to waste our time. And they're only going to talk about, and they're the best.
No bullshit.
Yeah, because you got to use your finger. No bullshit. It points to the right when you're done. No bullshit.
Great. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.